My name is Kelly Piacenti, and this is Jerry Hulick, and we're from Mass Mutual Insurance Company. I've been working with HD probably for the last 17 years. Prior to running a program for Mass Mutual, I ran a program, a special needs program for MetLife as well. So I became involved in HD many years ago, trying to help families and navigate them through some of the planning process. So today, Jerry and I actually specialize in this. I run Mass Mutual's program across the country. We have over 500 advisors that work in the special needs area, which means either they're a parent, caregiver, or have some reason to be in this particular area. I became involved with special needs 19 years ago when I had a son that has now passed away, but was very, very involved, total care, could only smile. So about 19 years ago, I became actively involved, not only as a parent and a caregiver and someone that was running this program at the company, but really to help families and advocate for them. Jerry has been doing special needs for quite a while. When he starts speaking, I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself as well. But today we're going to talk about planning and some of the things that maybe you can think about to preserve government benefits or to just put something in place if you haven't done anything as of yet. What we always say to families are it's never too late. So hopefully today some of the information we're going to give you will help you with your journey. If you have questions, we typically take them at the end if we haven't answered them in the presentation, but we will make time for every question. If we run out of time, we'll still be here to answer them. So don't feel anxious if you didn't get your question in. I'm not great with getting them online, but I'm certainly great with answering them live. So with that, I'm just going to introduce Jerry Hulick. And I'm going to sit down because there's people at home that are watching so they can see me because I'm too little behind the podium.
And
so you can see me
I'm
now.
Jerry Hulick, and I've been in and around special needs planning now for a little over 20 years, and just got into it because I felt it was a very neglected area. People didn't have any sort of centralized resource where to go and that kind of thing, and so it just emerged as a major part of my practice. I've been in the business now for a longer time than that. I like to kid. I think we just were calculating it. Kelly was 7 years old when I came in the business. So anyway.
Probably 4, but
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. So
that's it.
Exactly.
20 years ago.
Exactly.
4 kids later, I'm 20.
Clearly,
Yeah.
I have trouble with ages. What can I say? So you want just information about, provided by the speakers and everything. It's their disclosure of what's to take place in these workshops. And then Kelly, you want to do well? I'm asking Joe. Just recognize that we are not attorneys. We work with attorneys on a regular basis. There's 2 attorney groups that are out there that specialize in special needs planning and disability planning. And so we are not CPAs or accountants. But again, we're working together all the time. So much of this information, when you're dealing with an overall planning, is bringing everything together in a holistic kind of thinking around what the future is going to look like, what financial, what the legal structure may look like, how it has any sort of ramifications around taxation, and then the financial instruments that'll come into play when you're dealing with all these things. So Kelly has built a network around a lot of the organizations that are out there that service or are service providers for the disability community that are there, and they specialize in this area. But we ourselves are more in the financial area of the planning. So Kelly, go ahead.
Sure. So today we're going to talk about what's important to you as a caregiver. I can tell you that with speaking with families across the country, the one thing that keeps us up at night, and I use my hands a lot, so hopefully I don't hit the microphone, but what keeps us up at night is who's going to step in, who's going to take care of this person, or what's going to happen if I'm not there. Having my own son that was total care, it was something that was on my mind every day because there are lots of things we do for the person we're caring for, but what if we didn't come home? What if something happened? Who's going to step in? So today we're going to talk about what happens when you're no longer around. So step 1 is really planning for the future needs. A lot of the needs are really based on the individual. There's no cookie cutter approach. Some people that have a disability are much older, some are younger. So some of the things that we try to get our families to think about are medical treatments. Who covers them? Who's paying for them? Will the payments continue? We can see a lot of things changing in Washington. Things have been going on back and forth. What's covered, what's not covered. Insurance companies telling us certain procedures are covered, they're not covered. So when we speak with families and we try to do planning with them, we have them outline all of the medical treatments so that we can determine, well, you know what, if this was no longer covered, how would you pay for it? Where is the money going to come from? So that's something that we talk about. Education, not everybody is in a place that they're completely done with education. Plenty of people with disabilities continue with education. Years ago, people with special needs, they didn't have colleges, they didn't have facilities where people could continue their education. They certainly do today. Not for everybody, but it is something to take into consideration. Skill development. Maybe you did something your whole life and now you're no longer able to do it. So you need to consider maybe getting another skill, doing something different, or maybe not having that job that you've had your whole life. So that's something that we talk to families about as well. Employment, once again, you could have been in a job for many, many years, but maybe you're not working now. Maybe now you're on disability, or the person you're caring for has to go on disability and you've never worked. What does that mean from an employment perspective? Housing, we talk to families a lot about the house they're in. Will it accommodate the person that they're caring for? Are you, as the person with the disability, can you get around in this home? I know with my own home, my son was in a wheelchair. There were many accommodations that we had to make in order for him to continue to be able to live with us, because we had stairs, we had areas that he couldn't get into. So what do you need from a housing perspective? Do you need to move? Is there a place that the person has to go? Is there a nursing home? What exactly are you thinking of in terms of housing? So that's something we speak about as well. Transportation and travel. Maybe the person drives. Maybe the person needs someone to take them to every appointment, to work now, because then they don't have the ability to drive anymore. Maybe you need somebody that's going to pay for this. It's an Uber, it's a bus, it's a vehicle that accommodates the person. Maybe they were in a small car before, but now they need a van or something adjusted because now they're in a wheelchair. So that's something to take into consideration, because all of these things obviously cost money. And when we're looking at plans, many of the benefits could and sometimes are covered by government benefits. But if you've worked your whole life, to qualify for government benefits, it's not exactly easy. And these are things that our families need. When you have someone in a wheelchair, you need to be able to get them in the house, and you need to be able to get them there. So these are things that are a necessity for our families. And social and recreational. People will say to me, Kelly, you know, why do we have that on there? But life doesn't end because you have a disability or you're caring for someone with a disability. There are many programs, many different places that people want to go. They still need to socialize. Being at home and in a room all day is not healthy for the caregiver or the person with a disability. So what type of social events locally? You guys are involved with a great group. HD does a ton for their families, but where are you located? In what place? Is there something available to you? I'm from New Jersey, if you didn't figure that out, originally from Boston. But some of the things that we have are something like a dine around that they can come and get you if you have a disability and take you to a restaurant with other people that have difficulty getting in a restaurant. So it's what are the resources around you, and if they're not there, how much would it cost to pay someone? I mean, I know it's very difficult to get anyone to help, but how much would it cost to pay someone to come and get you and take you out to dinner once a week or do something for your family? So these are some of the things that we think about, and that would be step one.
As you're envisioning this and you're looking out and building a vision around what it's going to be, and all these things are coming into play, and there's generally going to be some sort of a legal structure around it, because what we're trying to do is capture ultimately a lifestyle and how that lifestyle is going to come into play. And as Kelly said, though, every decision we make also has a financial backdrop of some kind, where some sort of financial piece is going to be entered into it. So, you know, when we're looking at it holistically, we're having to look at it from, was there an employer involved? Are there employer benefits? Do we fully understand those benefits and when they're going to come into play? Government benefits, to include either public assistance benefits or even benefits that are more entitlements that we've qualified for over time, in addition to what we have accumulated over time. Those are going to come into play, and the planning around all the what ifs that are going to come into this. And so in each plan is, you'll hear conventional thinking around certain aspects, but each plan has to be individual about what the needs of the individuals involved are about and what are they looking to accomplish and what that vision is. And that's what makes it kind of unique on each way. So when we talk about step 2, other things that we look into in the transference of assets or what is to take place is important. And many of you know, because of Social Security and the means test under some of the aspects of SSI or some of these other programs, we have to be concerned that things are not going to transfer or come from one source or another without some understanding of how the transference should have taken place to maximize benefits. So if there's a disability involved that might involve a means-tested government benefit, you don't want an inadvertent inheritance or an inadvertent transference. So you take something as obscure if they were in a work environment situation with an HSA. People don't think of an HSA. They might think of the life insurance, group life insurance. They might think of a 401k, retirement plan, about the beneficiary arrangements. But any benefit that you might have through an employer that might pass, you don't want to necessarily pass without the instruction of where it's to pass and how it's to pass correctly. So we've had situations where an HSA had accumulated money in it and the individual passed away and enters the estate, and now that's just another asset that's going to go against the means test. Same thing with others that may be leaving money. So to the extent we can anticipate all these things happening through transference, different transference options like TOD, which is typically what you put on like a brokerage account or something like that, which is a transfer on death. PODs are like on bank accounts, checking accounts and things. All of these have aspects of very specific way of passing them through so that we align them with what the plan is to be in the process.
So when we think about reviewing beneficiaries and when we talk to our families, most people that we run into with HD, they've probably worked most of their life if they're older. And one of the things is that there is a way in this country for you to get government benefits, but also put money away that you've worked for your whole life. So it's kind of having the best of both worlds. So when we say review beneficiaries, if you apply for government benefits, they start asking you about everything and anything that you've accumulated, that you have, that your name is on. So these are some of the things that you need to take a look at. So in order to qualify for government benefits, there are very specific things that you need to do. So we always encourage our families to take a look at their beneficiaries. As a parent, my older children, my son had special needs, but one of the things is I had 4 children. So any benefits that I had, life insurance, anything through work that maybe I was not even aware of, it would automatically go to my spouse if I had one. And if you don't have a spouse, it goes to your children. So if you're leaving something to, say, a person with a disability, you could disqualify them from government benefits and not even realize it. So those are some of the questions that we ask our families. Review beneficiaries. Some of the things that Jerry's talking about, a bank account, it's going to pay to someone else upon your death. That's pretty customary. But some of the things we're more concerned about is, things you've worked your whole life for or beneficiaries that you've put on there. Does this person and can this person receive this kind of money and not disqualify them from government benefits? Because keep in mind that when a person applies for government benefits, you typically can't have anything in your name over $2,000. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of everything you have, but you can't have anything in your name. So there's ways in which you can move that so that, and it's legal, we're not telling you any secret solution here that's not legal. There are things that you can do, and the farther ahead you do it, the better off you're going to be, because there are a lot of look-back periods, and we'll talk about that as we get through the slides.
And one other comment here that comes into play also is that you'll hear terms when one spouse or another spouse might need more specific care or be in a facility. And you'll hear, spousal impoverishment, that the other spouse, is having to give up a certain amount of assets just to basically make the individual who needs the facility eligible. And so the advanced planning around those kinds of things and the transference of those kinds of assets in anticipation of what may take place, still leaving as much flexibility to everybody involved, but at the same time accomplishing what we want to do. The last thing we want to do is have a situation for a person who has to go into a facility and we've got to make the other person poor as well, and just to qualify. So all of this comes into this whole review of where assets are titled, how they're going to be transferred when the what ifs happened, and then basically taking it from that point forward.
So one of the things that we talk about, and people will probably say, well, this really seems ridiculous, but a family meeting is very important. I can tell you from my own family, everybody wants to help out, everybody wants to pitch in, but when they see what that entails, they don't truly understand what we do as caregivers, or if you're the person with a disability, what you will require in the future. So I had a lot of people raise their hands and say, I'd be happy to do this, but 24/7 care, able to do absolutely nothing on their own, is very, very difficult, and it's difficult for another family member to step into what we do as caregivers. So one of the things that I would always say is, have that conversation with the family members or the people around you. See what role they really want to play. It's okay if you're not going to be the primary caregiver. If you're not the one that's going to be using suction machines and different things, it's not for everybody. And I think I was realistic because my older children, are in their 20s. I don't know who they're going to marry. I didn't know who they would end up with, and if the person they're with wants to take this on as well, because as we all know, this typically is not done by one person. It takes a team. So I think having that conversation and holding a family meeting to say, hey, listen, I'm not getting better, or I'm going to need care for him. Who wants to play what role? We have somebody that wants to play a financial role that should play a financial role. Maybe somebody that likes to shop like me that shouldn't play a financial role, but maybe they're good with the daycare. So, everybody can play a role, but having that family meeting is really important because I've run into way too many cases and way too many scenarios when someone passes and then either older children or someone is left with this responsibility, and it's not that they don't love the person, but maybe they just can't take it on. So let's be open about that and try to have that meeting and that discussion with your family. It seems basic, but I can tell you on a weekly, probably I get a weekly call from someone that didn't have a conversation and somebody passed and they ended up having to take on responsibilities they're not comfortable with. So,
and I think when you think in terms of the family meeting, it's all over the place because you could have an aging parent who's doing the caregiving to a younger child and their adult child. I've had situations, and I always think of this when I think of the family meeting. I had a client who was a clinical psychologist, and yet he couldn't have the conversation with his own family. So he came in to us as a group to sit down so that we could help facilitate conversation. But his daughter was in her 40s, and he was trying to plan around it. He was caring for it, but they were also concerned with succession over time. And so when you take, the older generation, and the older generation, the less they want to discuss financial issues. They don't even want to share their status. And so we're needing to find out where people are, find out where the resources are that may come into play that apply then to the vision that we're going to look at. And that's where this communication piece here is critically important. And it's probably the one that, there may be some communication, but what typically is happening is there's a lot of assumptions that everybody's making that are going to take place, but they haven't really discussed it.
Well,
and so
they don't say anything. I had someone that clearly wanted to go into a nursing home. Family did not want that. But finally, they had to have a meeting, and he said, this is where I want to go. I don't want any of you taking care of me. But it took to get to that point. And, we talk about financial, but family meeting's not always about financial. It's really, maybe there's no finances there.
Yeah, the vision.
Right. So there's things like that. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So creating a team, these are some of the people that we suggest are on a team. What I always tell any family that I work with, there are people in every field that specialize in special needs. When it comes to the financial professionals, there is a designation, not through MassMutual, but in the industry, of people that specialize in this area. The same thing with an attorney. When you're getting a divorce, you don't go to a real estate attorney. Same deal with special needs. If you're dealing with someone that's doing your estate, it's not just an elder law attorney. There are attorneys in every state that specialize in special needs. and do special needs trusts and planning for families with someone that has a disability. So when you go to an attorney and it's your family attorney that you've had your whole life, not necessarily the one that you want to do this. In my own family, between my husband and my 2 older children, I have 4 attorneys. They could not do, yeah, I know it's scary, they could not do a trust for my son. This is not their expertise, not the area that they should be in. So keep that in mind. We have accountants that specialize in special needs and tells you specific deductions that you can take for, a seeing eye dog, for different things that people wouldn't think you could take a deduction for, putting in a ramp in your house, different things. So some of these accountants can tell you maybe about deductions that your normal CPA can't tell you. Health professionals, guidance counselors, religious, spiritual advisors, anyone can be on the team that can actually help your family or has guided you. Maybe somebody from HD, maybe there's another family. Anyone that can help you is someone that should be part of the team. Go ahead, Jer.
Well, again, when we think about, resources that are out there to help, I think the issue here is that many of the local nonprofits, and, Kelly has built a network around a lot of the nonprofits, just like we do here, are going to be local resource through local chapters and affiliates, and they're going to have different things that are going to be available. They might maintain a resource list of things that people you can go to for supports. You're going to see newsletters and publications that are out there. We're picking up information from a lot of different places. There's always going to be support groups and things that are out that help, that just like what you're getting here and talking to other people to see what they're going through. Some of the government agencies, although sometimes it's not as easy to access or to find out, will also have great resource. And that's not necessarily going to be at the federal level. It might be at the county level. It might be at a state level. And there'll be different levels of places where you can go. But, always trying to find the resources that are there that you can utilize in the process of planning, and what's available and what's a resource to be available is going to be critically important to the best result. Anything to add there, Kelly?
Yeah, one of the things that COVID did for our community is it made everything a little more accessible for us. So we all know that we never had the ability to drive up to a Dunkin' Donuts and have them bring us coffee. Especially when you had somebody in a wheelchair in your car, you were like trying to get them out. So there have been some good things that happened. Everybody else kind of feels what we felt like. So those are some of the things, but a lot of virtual meetings, a lot of meetings online. So whether it's financial or social or housing, there are a ton of them. I've been doing for the last 2 years, and I worked with HD for many years, a ton of virtual meetings for different support groups, for different parents, for older parents that are caring for younger adult children. So, there's a lot out there for our families now with the virtual world, but even government agencies, you'd have to go and sit and wait in line. You don't anymore. They'll do some of those meetings over the phone. I don't know how effective it is, but they definitely do them over the phone, and they don't require you to be there anymore, which they used to do to us, regardless of the person's disability. So those are some of the positives that have come out of COVID.
So this is a big area that there's a lot of confusion around, and it's mostly because there's not readily available information. But when we look at basic government benefits, they're really divided into 2 sections. One is the entitlement benefits, that if we've been employed, we've all been paying into the Social Security system. If we've been self-employed, we've been paying into the Social Security system. And we really don't pay attention much, but I remember, we talk about age, I remember when my early working life, the Social Security maximum wage base that they taxed you on was about $16,000, okay? And so you got a raise about, 3 months, 4 months into the year, you'd paid what you needed to into Social Security, and now they no longer took Social Security out. The wage base the basic wage base today is now up to $143,000. And Medicare comes out on your entire income, regardless of how much money you make. So it never stops. And we're paying it. If we ever stopped and looked at what we're paying into Social Security, when we see the amount of money we've been paying into it, we really should do a better job of understanding all the benefits that are available to us in this process. So when I look at, there's 3 life events, premature death, making it to retirement, or a disability. Any of those 3 life events are more than likely going to kick off benefits in the entitlement area of Social Security. So again, making it to retirement, which you can take as early as age 62, and that age for full retirement is working out further. Then a disability situation is going to kick off benefits. And it's not just benefits for the person with the wage earner, it's also family benefits. So they're no longer sending out our Social Security statements on a yearly basis. They send them now every 5 years. And and when you turn age 60, they'll start sending them out again on an annual basis. So every 5 years, you'll get a statement. But basically the law states that if there's an inaccuracy or they didn't pick up your income incorrectly, you can only, now this is a perfect logic of the federal government, you can only make a change in a 3-year period of time. Okay? So they send the statements out every 5 years, but you can only make a change for a 3-year period of time. So if there's an error, you need to go online, basically, and establish an account with Social Security so you can online look at your Social Security statement 24/7 all the time, where it's updated and make sure it's done correctly. Does the federal government occasionally pick up the wrong incomes? Yes, they do. And so if you've got a situation of a family with 2 wage earners, then you're going to see these things come into play. So we all tend to look at our Social Security statements and say, okay, I can see 62, I can see it's now 67 or 68 for full retirement. If I'm working or if I'm getting a wage, okay, then prior to my full retirement, there's going to be an offset for my Social Security benefit. But if I've got 2 working spouses or one that might have to become more of a caregiver and not working anymore, could I possibly access benefits prior to full retirement? So that comes into play. If there's a disability involved, I might have access. And so that SSDI that's there, but then survivor benefits and the children's disability benefit. Now, for the wage earner, if you've got a wage earner with a children's disability benefit that retires and they've got a child with a disability, then that child, if they're unable to have substantial gainful wage, can get as much as 50% of the parent's benefit. It's a huge, huge benefit. And next to survivor benefits, which are for family, children under the age of 18 or children above 18 with a disability, if I were retired, just as an example, and my retirement benefit was $1,000, and I have an adult child who is not able to work, then that adult child would get $1,000, half of mine, and it doesn't affect mine, okay? So then after I pass, that goes to 75%. This childhood disability benefit is one of the most missed benefits out there. The other one is
just to go back to it, it used to be called DAC, Dependent Adult Child. So if you have an adult child with a disability, they're entitled to this even if they don't live with you, as long as they are a dependent adult child. So once you retire, they get 50%, doesn't affect your benefit. Once you pass, they get 75% for the rest of their life. So if you have a child that, could be a 25-year-old that lives in a group home or lives in a facility, they are entitled to this. It's really confusing for many of our families, and they think, well, he's 28 and he lives in, an assisted living or he lives in a group home. He's entitled to it. That is considered a disabled adult child. So they used to call it DAC. The government changed it to the Child Disability Benefit, but it is the one, as Jerry said, that most of our families miss. And we're typically dealing with people that will have a disability their entire life. So maybe they got it later on in life or they were diagnosed later on, but it's something that's lifelong. So they are entitled to this, and they don't have to live with the parent. Just keep that in mind.
But they do have to be diagnosed.
They do have to be diagnosed.
Before 21.
Not with DAC.
For DAC, it's
20,
before 22. Yeah. But so there has to be a diagnosis, a disability diagnosis, that's correct, and they can't be making a substantial gainful wage. But there's still a lot of people, I'm telling you, out there that are eligible for this that don't even know it exists. And the other thing that comes into play, the survivor benefit there, is if you've had a work history and you become disabled, then children under the age of 18 are also entitled to a benefit. So in my own case, my mother passed away when I was very young. I was only 11. She had a work record. My father didn't know about it, so he didn't apply for the survivor benefit, so I didn't get it. So at age 17, 6 years later, he realized that benefit existed, applied, and I got it for 2 years till I was 18. But if you have somebody that has a work record that becomes disabled and has children under the age of 18, then the children are going to split that benefit until they reach the age of 18. And then if there's a child with a disability, that's going to continue for the rest of their life if they can't do a substantial gainful wage. Now, why? So what's the technical aspects of this? It's because some of these benefits are missed. And as I said from the beginning, we're paying into this system a lot of money. It's important for us to understand that benefits exist and that we should be going after every one that we possibly can. We've done calculations whether to take it early at 62 and get the childhood benefit with it. Is that going to pay out more than just waiting and trying to get maximal benefits later? So any planner that's working with a family that doesn't take a look at how the impact of government benefits are going to be is not doing a complete job.
Well, they're also not telling us. So when you sit down with Social Security or you go and you sit with your local agency, they're not telling you that all these benefits are out there. You can ask them and they'll tell you, oh yeah, maybe you qualify for it, but they're not offering it up. I mean, I've had people go and sit down with them that have, children that have been diagnosed that are older, that have never received anything and don't say anything to them. So, I mean, you really need to know what's available because unfortunately, they're not in the, not in the mindset of giving you anything.
Right.
You really need to know. And don't be discouraged if they deny you. I think that's a typical process that we all receive. The first time you go, they deny you and say you're not eligible. You have to go back and do it again. I could get a denial today from one person and then go in tomorrow and be fine with somebody else. So it's the flavor of the day is what I tell families. So have as much information and documentation as you can get. If you have a diagnosis, if you have physicians, if you have a neurologist, whatever you have a copy of your own information. Don't plan on them getting it or obtaining it because that just doesn't happen.
Well, and think about it. If you're going in for a benefit for yourself under one of the reasons for qualifying, like retirement or a disability, they wouldn't know about the rest of your family unless you told them. And sometimes, like for retirement, you can apply for that online. But when it comes to children's benefits, you can't. That you've got to go in or you got to make an appointment. They were doing it by appointment virtual. Now many of the Social Security offices are beginning to open back up. So, it's just a critical area. So, Kelly, do you want to get into the public assistance
It's okay.
side?
You could keep going.
I
I'll
can
just
keep
add
going.
in. Keep going.
Okay.
You're on a roll.
Okay, but the three of them have already fallen asleep. So, no, it's a... All right, but public assistance. Okay, when we look at public assistance, we principally have SSI, which is not Social Security. It's administered by Social Security, but it's a public assistance benefit based on those that are disabled or indigent. And right now it's about $784 a month. It has two components. One is a living component, room and board, and that kind of thing. Many times people will go in and apply for SSI, and they won't necessarily talk about the housing arrangement. But you should basically say that lodging and room and board needs to be included, that you're going to be charging a lodging situation, and then they're going to qualify for the maximal SSI benefit. And that's going to be ratcheted for inflation. In many states, in about 35 of the states, it's a single application. Medicaid and SSI are the same application. In some states, they are distinct. I'm from Virginia. Virginia does everything backwards. So it's basically two different applications there. You have to go, and again, like Kelly said, if you don't know what to ask, they're not going to basically tell you how to go through the process. So the more informed we are going in, the better off it will be.
They tend to be a little bit better with public assistance when you're going there, but they're not going to talk to you about SNAP or food stamps or anything that you haven't asked about. I mean, at the age of 18, for many people with a disability, if they're a child, you've been under, your family or your parents' income, you may still live there. After the age of 18, regardless of where they live, it's based on their income. So we try to encourage a lot of families that are caring for someone younger with a disability that they shouldn't have anything in their name over $2,000. Because at the age of 18, though they're living in your home under your roof and your assets have nothing to do with the person that's 18. It's based on their assets. So if they have nothing under their name, you could potentially, that person could get food stamps any and all of these programs that they're eligible for and continue to live with you, and you could charge them lodging, which is a way of charging them rent. There are many things that become available to a person in this country once they turn 18, but it's really knowing that. They're not offering it up. Many of us are caregivers from someone that's younger. They don't say to us at the age of 18, it's a different game, because prior to the age of 18, many of us are not really eligible for anything for that person because it's based on the parents or the caregiver's income. So once the person turns 18, regardless of who's caring for them, it's based on their income. And they don't tell you that either.
And the important point here is the government benefits may help all aspects, really, of the lifestyle or whatever the needs may be. So it's important to understand what you're eligible for and, get the support and help that you can see that's there, what is there as a resource so that you know that you can apply for it and get that. There's a lot of programs out there. And unfortunately, just like Medicaid, it's going to vary sometimes state to state, the various different things that are out there. In Virginia, we've got rent subsidies. We've got various different things that come into play that are grants, that are not loans, that are not, monies that you have to qualify for. So it's going to vary almost literally state by state on that basis.
Just there's 743 waiver programs across the country. Not all means-based. And these waiver programs help families in need. They look at your income in some instances and others they don't. So it's really knowing what programs are available in your state. So many people are eligible for some of these waivers and they don't even realize it.
So again, as we talked about early on, you're gonna look at a potential illegal structure that's gonna come into play. And this is many times very scary because a lot of families, calling in an attorney and trying to find out what it's gonna be, and they're concerned about the costs and everything else. But we encourage there is to just ask the questions because it's gonna be important. You really can't have a full-blown plan unless you have a legal structure around the financial plan that you also have and the other things that are going to come into play. And this is where you're capturing a lot of the direction and a lot of the instruction of what needs to take place. I'm going to gloss over for a minute the letter of intent because we're going to come back to it, and Kelly spends a little bit more on time on that. But that's not a legal document, but it's basically something that captures all the wishes and desires of what's to take place over the future. And we have a template for that, but we'll come back to it. Guardianship and alternatives to guardianship comes down to the capacity of all the individuals involved. We're seeing more and more today because we're living longer and longer as well with the aging population. The guardianship is becoming more commonplace for the aging population because they're losing capacity from the standpoint of being able to understand what's taking place.
But you want to keep in mind with guardianship, years ago, the courts would give it to the caregiver and not think twice about it. It's not that easy anymore. You have to petition the court if you want full guardianship over someone. So it doesn't have to be full. It could be partial guardianship, maybe guardianship over medical because the person won't take their medications or can't make those decisions, or maybe over financial because the person no longer has the capacity to make financial decisions. So guardianship isn't an all or nothing, but I can tell you that if you do appear at an emergency room or a physician with someone that's over the age of 18, and if you're anything like me, directing everybody, telling them what I need, what I don't need, they don't have to listen to you. So even though my son was nonverbal and couldn't make any of those decisions, the problem is that I needed guardianship for them to take me seriously or speak to me. So I'm not, I don't push guardianship either way. A lot of nonprofits don't believe in it because it's taking away the person's rights, and I agree. If the person has the capacity to make their own decisions, they should. And we shouldn't be taking their rights away. But if somebody is going to be harmed or they're going to give them treatment that you don't believe in, I didn't believe in tracheing or different things, I didn't want to see that happen because my son wasn't able to say, no, I don't want that. I wanted the ability to do that. So that's when we say that you need to think about guardianship and some alternatives to it. I mean, wills are something. How many people in this room have a will? Okay, every single one of you do. You don't realize it. So everyone in this room has one, whether you know it or not, because your state has one for you. So you may not like it, but if you pass away, they have a will for you. So my suggestion is, you need to write something. We are not advocates of doing anything online or doing anything quick and down and dirt, but you need to do something because if you have assets and you're trying to protect someone, that may be getting government benefits, you could disqualify them. So you do have a will, whether you realize it or not, but having one drafted is probably, the best decision if you have any assets, or just if you have any, what you want people to have and you want them to know. That can all go in your will.
The will is the basic directional legal document that kind of sets the stage of the direction of things to go to. So you'll hear the will talked about in conjunction with a trust, which gets more specific around how things can be done. But the will is your basic document.
Right, and the state will is not going to say, hey, you have somebody with special needs, I can't give them your money because I'm going to disqualify them. It doesn't work that way. You've disqualified them by not having that will. So just keep that in mind. Advanced medical directives, durable general power of attorney. These are some of the things that when you sit down with an attorney or you talk about your estate, those are some of the things that they will go over with you. If you are a person that's diagnosed, it's something that when you're having this meeting, it's a good idea to talk to an attorney about it to see what your options are. It's not for everybody, but they can certainly explain to you what each one is and how it would apply. Estate planning, that's something that we encourage all our families to do sooner versus later. Trusts, we'll talk a little bit about a special needs trust. Ownership, beneficiaries, we talked a little bit about that. Special needs trust, we have a slide so that you can understand what a special needs trust can do. And just really remembering to update them. I have people that we work with that did a will, 25 years ago. Everything's changed, including the people that they were leaving assets to. So it's something you want to take a look at and let others know where it is. Because a lot of us are great at doing all these documents, but they're hidden away. So if anything happens, that doesn't help your family. And what I always say is having all these great plans up here is fabulous, but if you pass away, who knows what was up there? It just doesn't work that way. So you need to write things down. That's one of the things we encourage our families to do.
Another couple of comments about guardianship, and Kelly made the comment, these days we see more limited guardianship where rights are left in place as much as possible, and many times protections are put in so that the person can't be taken advantage of by a contract or something like that if they didn't fully understand it, or a situation where equipment's involved and somebody's trying to take advantage of a situation. So all of these come into play. Advanced medical directives, you can pretty much, assuming all of these have to assume some level of capacity of the individual. So the sooner they're anticipated, because many times you're not giving up control by some of these. A power of attorney doesn't give up control. It adds additional people that can help. So really looking at what they are, advanced medical directives today with all the HIPAA rules, as Kelly says, once over the age of 18, you may not have access to any information. I had a situation with my niece and nephew. She was in a car accident. They were in their 30s. There was no documents, okay? And so they started billing dunning notices and everything to my nephew, and they wouldn't even provide the information to tell them what the bills were about because they said he didn't have access. There was no medical directive. We literally had to go in and get emergency guardianship just for him to access the information that was taking place. Even though they were both on the auto insurance policy, they were both on various policies together. So, some of these documents, you can pretty much take care of the medical issues through advanced medical directives, if there's capacity to do so. And otherwise, then it might be over-encompassed into a guardianship type situation. But all of these are critical to an overall plan.
Right.
And again, as they say, it's not static. It does require that we review this with some regularity at the same time.
And sometimes it's really about putting protections in place so people don't prey on our community, because we see more of that, people trying to take advantage of a person with a disability versus the person with a disability doing something reckless. So that's why some of those protections are put in place. Special needs trust, there's a couple different types of trust. There is a third-party special needs trust and a first-party. We typically see a third-party special needs trust because this type of trust is set up on behalf of the individual and does not have a payback provision. A first-party trust is typically a special needs trust that has a payback provision for any government benefits that you've received. So one of the things to keep in mind, there's also a pooled special needs trust, and the Special Needs Trust Fairness Act allowed individuals with a disability to set up their own trust, which they couldn't have done many years ago. But really what a special needs trust is, we had said before, it's kind of having the best of both worlds. So this is something that's put in place for the benefit of the person with a disability so that they can have over $2,000, but it's in the trust. The trust does not disqualify them from government benefits. So you can have $1 million in the trust and still get food stamps and every other type of government benefit that you qualify for. There are restrictions with a special needs trust. It has to be drafted prior to the age of 65, I believe. Mm-hmm. So it has to be drafted prior to the age of 65, and it has to be for the benefit of the individual with a disability. So some of the things that you could use a special needs trust for once it's funded, you could use it for mobility equipment. You could use it for caregivers. You could use it to improve the quality of life of the individual. You could take the individual on a trip with a caregiver, but could you take your whole family? No. Could you buy a vehicle and put that in the trust to bring the person, to their appointments, to bring them different places? Absolutely. If the person's in a wheelchair, can you buy a red Corvette? No, you really can't, because that doesn't make sense, right? Some of the things that you could do with a special needs trust is you could put a house in a special needs trust so that the person has somewhere to live and that the trust owns the house. But the problem is that the house can't be underwater. The money has to be in the trust for the upkeep, the mortgage, whatever it is. I live in New Jersey. We need to make sure that if a house is in a trust, that there's money in there for snow removal, for things that the house would need. So special needs trust, in my mind, is really having the best of both worlds. A pool trust is something that maybe the person doesn't have as much money and they prefer to put it with a nonprofit that's going to oversee it and they're going to help them. But when the person passes, typically, not always, because there are some pool trusts that the money can go back to the family, but sometimes it goes to that nonprofit that you set it up with. With a third-party special needs trust, you can put life insurance, you can put an inheritance. Anything you put in there can be used over the person's life. When the person passes, that money can go back to the family. And in the event of a first-party special needs trust, when the person passes, the money will go back to the government for Medicaid, right?
Recovery.
Any Medicaid recovery, but if there's only $50 in the trust and the person got $1 million from Medicaid, they're only getting $50, nothing else. Would I suggest that you put a house or a car or anything substantial in a first-party special needs trust? No, because the government can take that back. A third-party trust is very different because there is no payback provision on it. So a special needs trust are options for our families. It's a way to put money for the person that you're caring for. You can leave life insurance there. You can leave different things. Is it considered an asset? No, but if the person inherits the money and you didn't do anything, you didn't have a trust ready, nothing was payable, those beneficiaries that we talked about before on any life insurance or anything you have, you can leave a special needs trust as a beneficiary, but it has to be set up. So if it's set up and someone passes, the money goes right there and doesn't disqualify the person. So that's really, as I say, it's the best of both worlds, as long as everything in the trust is used for the benefit of the individual. It's not a checkbook for the family. It's not something to make everybody else's life better. It's to make the person's life better. So whatever they need, they can take out of the trust as long as it doesn't duplicate what the government benefits are giving you. So you can't use it for food and shelter if you're getting government benefits. But you can set up something called an ABLE account, which is like a 529 for people with special needs, and you could take money from a special needs trust, put it in an ABLE account, and pay rent and food and shelter.
Are you taking questions now? Or?
Sure, you can go ahead. We'll just repeat it, Joe, because there's people online.
Okay, so at the beginning you mentioned the chartered special needs consultant.
Correct.
And we need to go find one of those people in our area to work with. Would they be aware of this?
Yes, the question was in various different areas across the country, chartered special needs consultant is the credential coming from the American College. You can go online and it's also going to be to the American College, and there's a listing of all the chartered special needs consultants, and you can identify it that way. they've been through a training program that's a little bit more exhaustive in these areas. And so, yeah, the hope is that they're going to be better qualified, particularly in the government benefits and in the various different legal instruments and things like that to assist.
So are special needs trusts under the charter?
Special needs trusts
No.
are legal instruments.
It's a-
Your attorney for that. But again, as Kelly said earlier, the question is, do you go to your estate planning attorney for that? Many of those that are in the Special Needs Alliance, as well as the Academy of Special Needs Planning Attorneys, came out of elder law and were estate planners. So you want to look at the Special Needs Alliance, or you want to look at the Academy of Special Needs Planners that are both through attorney groups, as well as NALA, which is the estate planning group. But you really want to find people that are conversant in special needs. And one of the questions I typically ask is, how many special needs trusts have you done in the last year? If they say 2 or 3, they're not really actively doing it.
Yeah.
And you're going to the people that you're going to want to get the best result. That, in conjunction with a chartered special needs consultant or planner that understands the disability arena, is going to get you the best result.
So when we talk about special needs trusts and some of the things, at MassMutual, we have over 500 advisors that specialize in this area. They work with local attorneys. They don't work for MassMutual because we make sure that they go to 3 or 4 different attorneys that specialize in this area. So they typically can direct you to an attorney that can help you with a special needs trust if that's something that you're interested in doing.
So the question, who directs how the trust is being spent? Do you have to have a trustee that's in charge?
You can, absolutely. And it's good. It's putting protections in place so that someone that you leave, I could be the trustee of my son's trust, but we had a bank involved too, so that from a reporting perspective too, that the government is seeing what you're spending it on. Because when you put money in there, right, you're able to do that. They're letting you have the best of both worlds. They want to make sure that you're spending it on the individual and that it's appropriate. So a trustee, but there's also reporting. The federal government does make sure that you're spending it appropriately.
In tax reporting.
Yeah, and we don't typically have a problem because once you spend it on the wrong thing, they will be coming back and saying, what happened? They're slow on everything, but do something incorrectly, they'll be right back. It won't take long. Did you have a question, sir?
I do have a question. You said that in special needs trust, you need to have a disability prior to age 65. So if we have Huntington's disease, we know there's going to be a disability at some point. So we can't establish it until a disability occurs. You know, maybe
No,
after 65.
you can't, if you've got a disability, the law doesn't allow you to do a third-party trust after the age of 65. But anytime prior to there where there's a diagnosis, you could set it up at any point.
So it's just a diagnosis, not actually a disability.
Correct.
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 So it's a special, let's say I'm the caregiver and I have a spouse or child. Let's just talk spouse first. I have a spouse. I'd be the caregiver, she'd be the recipient or the patient. So this trust would need to be established prior to my 65th.
No, the individual that has the disability has the trust.
Thank you.
So just repeat it in the,
So you, as caregiver, might be the trustee of the trust for the benefit of that
it's for the
individual.
benefit of the individual. So the question coming is, how do you, the drafting of the trust, what's the name? So in the case of my son, it was the Special Needs Trust of Nicholas Piacenti. And that's the way it was set up. So my beneficiaries, anything that I had with my vital documents, it would be my other 3 children straight out and then him. But it would be the Special Needs Trust of. So you can have it set up. Once you meet with an attorney and you talk to them, whether it's a necessity or not, you can have that set up and leave it sitting there unfunded until something goes into it. So just because you set it up doesn't mean it has to be funded overnight, because it does not. A lot of people set them up and don't have any means to fund them until maybe life insurance or a settlement, and that's the way that they fund the trust. A lot of our families do that.
Because you set it up, it doesn't mean it has to immediately be funded.
We have to get going a little bit, because,
We're good.
okay. We went over guardianship
Yeah, we
and
talked about that,
conservatorship.
and again, this can be over encompassing, or it could be limited in nature, so we just, want to make sure that when you're dealing with these instruments, understand that it's your plan. It's not a conventional thing that needs to take place, and you need to make your own decisions around whether it's applicable in your situations.
And the court will ask to speak to the person with a disability if they're able to speak and say, why are you giving up guardianship? It's not like it was years ago. They take it very seriously. So it's not a simple overnight process. If the person is, prior to the age of 18, you want to start the role, probably start filing some of the paperwork at 17. Or if you know someone is sick and that this is a possibility, you want to get that paperwork in so that the court can schedule a date for you to go for a hearing for the guardianship proceedings. So have I identified a care provider? I mean, how do I assure the care I would personally give my dependent? It's somebody that you need to identify that can really step in. We talked a little bit about it before. We all have these great plans. What if it falls through? Who's next in line? What is the plan? And when the person is able to tell you what they want the plan to be, this should all be taken into consideration. But you need to identify someone, because if you're not there, who's going to do it? So it's a conversation that you need to have that's going to give them the same type of care that you would. The letter of intent is something that Jerry had indicated before. This is not legally binding, but has been upheld in a court of law many, many times. And if you do nothing else leaving here today, I have a template. We'll give you my information. I will send you the template, and you can put this with your vital documents. What I say is it's a letter to the babysitter on steroids. So when you had small children, you would leave a letter of instruction saying, this is what I want you to do, this is what I don't want you to do. This is one on steroids. This is something you can put in a notebook, you can put it in the template I have, you can put it on a CD, you can put it on your computer. It's something that if I didn't go home, even though I had a husband, somebody would know exactly what to do with my son that was nonverbal. I have friends that are caring for adults or their spouses that are now able to speak and tell them what they want in the future. You can speak about physicians. You can talk about the greatest physicians or physicians you wouldn't bring a dog to. You can talk about medications that have worked or medications that have been a complete failure. My son was on the ketogenic diet for 3 years. What were the results? Put it in there so if that I wasn't there, somebody else could kind of follow this roadmap. Therapies that worked, therapies that didn't work. What about religion? What about marriage? What about people around them? We have a very high divorce rate in this community. Do you want someone stepping in that's never been in their life since they were a baby, suddenly coming back because you passed away? Is there somebody that's wonderful to this person that you want to make sure that they're part of their life? These are the things you can put in the letter of intent. Treatments, therapies. My son had an extensive amount of therapies. We did a video that people could see because you just couldn't possibly explain all the things that we did. I have friends that, there are things that soothe the person. Take them for a walk around the park, do this, whatever makes that person's life better, you can put in this letter of intent so that, if something happens to you, someone else can advocate for them. I had said in the beginning, and anyone knows me, they know this is true because I'm a little bit off, but I came from Boston, born and raised, and I moved to New Jersey. I wasn't always a New Jersey resident, but when it came time for my son, one of the things in the letter was, don't ever take him to a Yankees game, because I am a big Red Sox fan, and I feel like he'd be the same way, right? He couldn't say it, so I said it for him. So anything that you think is the person's desire, or if the person can help you write that letter, do it. You can do it today. You can do it next week. Update it as things change. Therapies change. Medications change. Put it in this notebook and keep it so that if you don't do your will, if you don't do your vital documents, put this with your vital documents in your house. I don't ever want to live in a group home. I never want to go to an assisted living facility, or I do want to go into a nursing home. I don't want my kids to take care of me, or I want to live with my daughter. I don't want to live with my brother that was awful to me my whole life. These are the things that you need to put down for the person that you're advocating for. So if you want the letter of intent template, I will send it to you. But if you do nothing else walking away from here, this is something that you could do. And if something happens, a court would take a look at it. And as I've said, they've been upheld. So it's something that I feel is one of the most important techniques that we can all do and doesn't cost anything. And there's no reason why you can't do it. It's difficult, and mine was about this big, but some people do them once a year. Some people do them every 6 months. Some people do them every 10 years. It's really up to the individual. So one of the things is, how do I start the planning process? This gentleman asked us questions. We suggest that you work with professionals, not just Mass Mutual people that specialize in this program, but people in general that specialize in special needs. They understand the government benefits. They understand some of the different techniques that we use with our families, the trust, the way to leave money, the way to qualify for government benefits. So when it comes to a financial professional, not everybody has the designation here, but if they work in the special needs arena, 86% of what I have are special needs parents and or caregivers themselves. This is not something that the financial industry just takes on because they like it. Typically, it's somebody like myself that does it for a reason. You could go ahead.
Well, again, as we've said, and Kelly will provide anybody who wants the letter of intent, and you'll see our contact information up there. But, you know, we have a network of special needs planners that she heads across the country that are available, so she could also introduce you to various different people. We've built, and she has built nonprofit collaborations with various different nonprofit groups that can, you know, help as resource to what you may be looking at. We can also introduce, depending upon the area, we're very well aware, we attend these attorney meetings, and so we're very well aware of the attorneys that many times across the country in the various different areas. So if you want an introduction there, and then also just talking about all the various different options of the use of a special needs trust, how to fund them, set them up, and those kinds of things, you'll get that kind of particular expertise. And so, summary?
It's really about lifetime care and quality of life. It's, you know, what that person wants for themselves and what you want for them. Not everybody's going to care for that individual the way we do. There are things that you can put in place to ensure that that happens. So we strongly suggest that you try to have that conversation, speak with the person, and do what's best for them. This is some of our information. This is my website address at Mass Mutual. My name, once again, is Kelly Piacenti. You can certainly reach out, send us any questions you have, and we're happy to respond. We can give you lists of attorneys locally. Once again, they don't work for Mass Mutual, but we know who specializes in this area. We're just going to see if there's any questions, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them for you. 10 minutes for questions? Okay. Let me just see if there's questions online. Okay. Great. And I have a couple questions if you want to hear from. We have some people online, and it says, can my wife be denied disability benefits? I have a high income. There you go. That's your first question.
Okay, well.
Do you want me to answer it?
If we're talking about Social Security benefits, it would be based on her earnings record. And if she's got income, and if she has income, in other words, she's receiving it as a survivor benefit, then it's going to be dependent upon, you know, her own work record or the work record of the individuals there. But if a disability comes into play and they're eligible and qualified under a disability, you're going to be eligible for benefits.
And keep in mind, they always deny you. I can't say that enough.
Well, you say that. I think you can get prepared in a way that, I mean, we find the more prepared we help our people be in the application process. So things like, you know, don't ever send anything to Social Security you don't keep copies. Don't ever fax anything that you don't keep when that fax arrived and who it was received by, or any way that you can document that it's gone in. The more things you do to foolproof the process, then the better chances are you won't receive a denial initially. And I think it's a lot of it's a prep thing. And so get the best advice as to, you know, what do you need to package to send into that process. And don't talk to the front line, get behind the back line into where you've got the public relations people that really know the right answers and those kinds of things in the process with Social Security.
So the next question is, and I can certainly answer this, for the Special Needs Trust, does the attorney that helped have to be in the state you live? Well, it's kind of twofold. The trust has to be drafted in the state in which the person lives. So we have a lot of people that maybe live in New York and they move to Florida. The trust has to be redrafted in Florida. It has to follow the person with the disability. So if you are the person with the disability living in Florida, that trust has to be drafted in Florida. If you had it drafted in another state, you can have it fixed to the state of Florida. So that is something that you have to do. The attorney, does the attorney have to be in the state of Florida? No, but they have to be admitted in the state of Florida. So the trust has to follow the person. So if you're the caregiver and the person you're caring for lives in Arizona, that trust has to be drafted in the state of Arizona. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'll make one other comment too. If you do apply to Social Security and they deny initially, there's two levels. There's a reconsideration and then there's an appeal. Reconsiderations is something the process starts immediately and they'll re-look at the situation. So you specifically ask for reconsideration. If you ask for an appeal, that is a minimum usually of a 2-year process to go through the whole thing. So always ask for reconsiderations when there is any kind of a denial involved. And again, the better you prepare yourself going in, the better the chance you have of getting full benefit structures.
Great. Well, I don't have any other questions online. Did anyone have any questions?
I
Sure.
just wanted to comment on that being denied thing. What I was told was having a lawyer to help you with it is very helpful to not be denied, and they only take a certain percent. It's really worth it to get the lawyer involved, not just to try to do it on your own.
Yeah, they're literally attorneys. Yeah, the question was that it's helpful to get an attorney to help with the application process, or particularly when it comes to, going back in for an appeal or going back in for a reconsideration. And we encourage that as well. A lot of it is just getting prepared to do so, and that's one of the things the attorneys know how to do is be prepared for going in to do it. There are attorneys that may do special needs trusts or they may do estate planning or things, but they don't do appeals to Social Security and those kinds of things. There are specialty attorneys that do just that. So we encourage it many times, and it's a good idea. Sometimes it's a matter of affordability because they've got, you got to be able to afford that. It's going to be another fee involved.
But I think that there's just a standard amount that they take.
Depends upon the state.
It depends upon the state, the amount that they charge. Yeah, but the other thing is not everybody can afford an attorney, and there are self-advocates that help. There are not self-advocates, there are advocates within the state, and there are nonprofits, even maybe your local HD. There are attorneys that will do it for free. They will try to help a family out, but there are advocates that will go with you that have done this many times over and will try to represent the family. So we don't want people to think if they don't have the money for an attorney that it's over and they should accept the denial. There are nonprofits and organizations that will certainly help you and try to advocate for you to get the right thing done. Great. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Good.
We
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you.